for tuning in and for listening. We have a special guest today, Representative Christy Zito, who is a Republican House member from the state of Idaho. And today we're going to talk about constitutional carry and or permitless carry, whatever you want to call it. Christy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I have a cousin in Utah. Well, I have many cousins in Utah, but this one in particular listens to your show all the time. And he said, you need to get with these guys.
I saw that. I saw
here
that
we are.
part of your bio is that you were born in Utah and you are ranch and farm raised.
Yes, that's correct.
So you're farm raised, cage free?
Yes, we were back then. Yes, we weren't. Everybody just wandered until the sun went down, and then you went home.
There you go. Fantastic. But you made your way up north, and you are now a part of the Idaho House. Now, Idaho's pretty conservative, with a few exceptions. Is that not correct?
We like to say we are, yes.
Well, I know that during the reign of Comrade Barry Soetoro that he filled some of your cities, particularly Boise, with the people who are not so much conservative.
Right, we're seeing some results of that in Boise now. It's pretty disheartening.
Yeah. So, but the main thing we want to talk about is the push for more freedom and more liberty and more constitutionality in Idaho. Will you tell our listeners about the bills that you sponsored in that regard and what they're all about?
Right. So what we've done is we have pretty close to as full of constitutional carry as any state in the nation right now. The push for constitutional carry began in 2012 or 14. I'm not sure. I was not in the legislature at that time. When I got in, then we started the push again. Last year, in the 2019 session, we were able to get through so that the citizens of our state who were 18 and older could carry open or concealed anywhere they wanted in the state. And then prior to that, you could not in the city limits carry concealed. Now, this year, we were successful in getting law passed, which will take effect July 1st, that you could carry open or concealed unless you're otherwise prohibited everywhere in our state if you are a legal resident of the United States. And the Constitution does not end at the border of our state. So we're pretty pumped and pretty excited that we were able to get this done.
Yeah, that actually is something that I appreciate. Being in Wyoming right now, I didn't realize this until I looked into it further. I knew that Wyoming was constitutional, and then they also have a permit system that's recognized by the bordering states and so forth. But there is an exception in the Wyoming bill. The Wyoming constitutional carry is only for Wyoming residents. I was not originally aware of that until I looked into it deeper. And I think that's probably, I don't know if there are plans in Wyoming to alter that or not, but we've had a discussion on this show several times, and I've been hammering on it a lot lately, that if your state forces you to give them money and submit to their basically permission process, then it's not a right, it's a privilege. And if you think it's a right, they're actually holding it hostage and they're ransoming it back to you. Would you agree that's a fair assessment?
Oh, I would totally agree with that. You know, rights are given to us by our Creator, and they're innate and inalienable, and they are ours to possess. They are not something that we should have to beg permission to do. So licensing and permitting, you know, like a business license and the concealed carry permit, for example, or any permit to carry a gun, that is just one way that the government is controlling your inalienable rights. And we have allowed it to happen. We've been complacent. We said, okay, well, you know, it's just a little bit. It's just a license. It's just a little tax. And any licensing fee or permit fee, it's a tax. Make no mistake about it. It's just a tax. So we've been complacent and we've let it happen. And now we are seeing that these permitting and licensing processes are allowing governments to control commerce and to not let people go back to work and to not let stores open over this pandemic, whether you think it's true or not true. But it is allowing government agencies and entities and governors to control our God-given right to be in business, feed our family, and procure property and the right to life and liberty.
What you just described is what we've been calling the reasonableness disease for, I don't know, as long as I've been speaking into this microphone. You know, the reasonableness disease is like, well, it's not that difficult, so just go along with it. And what you bring up is an excellent point. You know, for those of us that are 2A, we should be 1A. We should be everything A. We should, you know, people are like, are you 2A? And I'm like, well, I actually support that whole entire Constitution thing, not just little parts of it. But
that's an excellent point, because, you know, if there's no reason to pick out the Second Amendment or the First or the Fourth or the Fifth, because they are all there. They all work together. They're all our rights, not a privilege that are bestowed upon us by the government, which should be the people. And the government should never do anything for you or to you that you would not be able to get away with doing for your neighbor. So can you walk over to your neighbor's house and tell him to give you his gun, or tell him that he can't stand on his front step and speak his mind? No, you'd be in big trouble. The neighbor's not going to put up with that. Your government should not be able to do anything like that to you that you cannot personally or would not personally do to your neighbor.
Absolutely. And we find a situation where what the situation we've created in the United States of America is a ruling class versus a ruled class, or a peasant class, when the government is creating laws and immediately exempting themselves from those laws. Say, well, these don't apply to us. They only apply to you, the peasant class. And I think we've allowed it for far too long, and it's time to reverse course.
Well, it does, and it has happened. And years ago, when I still lived in Utah, we had a little produce stand in northern Utah. And we had so many people in and out all summer and all fall long. And people would stand there and they would complain, and they'd say, well, the government shouldn't do this and the government should do that. And all this about what the government should or should not do. It's important that we remember we are the government. We have created this. We allow these people to stay in office. We allow these things to happen. Now, granted, I know that when, 20 years ago, I was busy raising my family and trying to pay my taxes and trying to pay for our farm. And I didn't have a whole lot of time to really be involved in politics and what happened and what went on. So I'm as guilty of the complacency as anybody. But we've passed the line of reasonableness, and it's time to draw that line back and in a peaceful way retake control by electing people who will truly be our voice and who will truly represent our values, the Constitution, the freedoms and the liberties that we hold dear. Freedom is the ability to make a choice. I'm free to decide that I'm going to get up in the morning and go to the coffee shop. Liberty is the ability for me to act on that freedom. And if I'm free to choose, but I can't act on it, my liberty is gone.
Well, absolutely. And part of the problem I've seen for years and is that on one side, and I think you agree with me, it's the Democrat side, the socialist side, is people can't be allowed to make the decision because they might make the wrong one. They might make the decision that we don't want them to make. So we're going to eliminate that, and we're just going to force, we're going to require, we're going to mandate. In this current, Kung Flu pandemic, why couldn't we just give the people the information and allow the people, if you run a business and you're afraid that someone's going to come in with the Kung Flu and infect you, then close your business. But we can't. The situation we find ourselves in is that the people can't be allowed to make decisions on their own. That must be mandated. It must be, there must be orders. And it insults me. I'm insulted when I read newspaper stories or whatever. I know we don't have newspapers today, but well, actually, we do in Wyoming. We actually have
We do. They're typically
dead tree papers.
liberal pieces, but anyway.
Yeah, but the governor has ordered, hath ordered. The mayor has ordered, and what's sick to me is that not enough people are saying, "Whoa, pump the brakes, Jack. You don't have the authority to order me to do anything. That's not how a representative republic works."
No, I agree. I agree completely. Give us the facts, let us know what's happening, and leave us alone. It's not the government's job to keep us safe. And we know this in a roundabout way through Supreme Court rulings that have actually been made about the Second Amendment and police force. So the police, the sheriff, your city police, whomever, have no legal responsibility to keep you safe. And that's been ruled on more than once by the Supreme Court. So on that same vein, then the Department of Health and Welfare really has no legal business trying to keep you safe. That's your job. It's your job to protect you, yourself, your family, those you care about. That's your job. It's not the government's job to come in and say. But again, just like we spoke about a little bit earlier, they are using the licensing process now against businesses to tell them they can only allow 50% of their capacity into their businesses if and when the government and the Department of Health and Welfare decide they can reopen. That's not freedom, and that's not liberty. And you are 100% correct.
Did you know that when you woke up this morning that you were a student of the gun?
Oh, yeah, because I got the email and I think I filled it out and returned it.
Because what you're saying is, I don't know how much did you do prep work before you came on? Did you go to Student of the Gun and see what we've said and done and what have you?
Actually, no, because I'm still in the middle of the election that never wants to end. I'm running for Senate this time. I've served 2 terms in the House of Representatives, and our Senate seat came open. So now I'm running for Senate, and our election date was May 19th, but of course, the vote count got changed to June 2nd. So that means the election is June 2nd. So I'll be honest, I didn't really have time to go in and look. But my cousin, when we were messaging back and forth, he told me a little bit about you and how awesome you all were and how you really stood for freedom and not just Second Amendment freedom. And, I think it's interesting when we think about how passionate people are about the Second Amendment, and you alluded a little bit to the idea that sometimes the others kind of get overlooked, and we don't focus on them quite as much. But through the years now that I've been working on gun legislation and thinking about this, I believe that the reason the Second Amendment stands kind of out from the rest is something physical and tangible we can hold on to. During President Trump's election in 2016, we were called gun-toting, Bible-thumping rednecks, I believe was one of the descriptions for us. We can hold that gun and we can hold that Bible, that freedom of religion and that right to keep and bear arms. They're tangible, and we can hold on to them and we can see them. And so they give us the strength and the faith and the courage to stand together to protect and defend all of our other rights. It's important that we don't forget them.
And we've been saying for years that if we allow, and I hope that a small percentage or maybe a large percentage of the population who's wasn't kind of already in our camp will start to get it, because we've been saying, look, if you lose the second, all the other ones are gone. They will be. And what we're seeing during this Kung Flu pandemic crisis that they've manufactured and created is that we were absolutely right. That the same people that don't want us to have guns or this kind of gun or that kind of gun, or, you have to get a permission slip for a gun, blah, blah, blah. Those same people immediately turned down the First Amendment. and said that it's irrelevant and it only counts if we say it counts. And if we don't say it counts, then none of that First Amendment stuff matters.
Right. And our rights are being and have been eroded for years now. And we've, again, been complacent. But I really believe that this is waking people up. You know, when a business owner wakes up and he says, hey, you know, I can't open my store. Or when we find out that we may have to have a QR code on our phone to go into a place of business to buy bread for our families, that's way, 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 way too far. And I hope and I pray that this is waking people up and that, you know, they're going to say, no, you know, enough of this is enough. That this is not the American way. This is not what my grandparents came here for. You know, I'm a second generation American. My grandparents came from Albania on my father's side. And I remember asking my dad if he would teach me to speak Albanian when I was about 12. And he looked at me and he said, no. And I'm thinking, okay, that's harsh. You know, how cool would it be? And I tried to plead my case to him. And he said, we are Americans. We came to this country to be Americans. And that is what you will be. Now, we still honor our culture. I make Albanian food, you know, for my family. I pass that culture on. But we are Americans. And we came here to be Americans, to own property, to be able to defend ourselves and to live those God-given freedoms and rights and liberties that are ours, just innately ours.
Yeah, I've said before, so, you know, my on my dad's side, they came from Germany, but they didn't come to the United States of America and stand up and demand that all the street signs be made in German because that's what they spoke, or all the public notices be in 2 languages, you know, to accommodate them. They learned to speak the language. They said, this is how we assimilate. This is how we become part of America. And I've been railing against this for 20 years about this nonsense that we have to do everything in 2 languages. You know, when I was growing, my kids grew up in Florida for a time, and Jared went to public school in Florida, and everything had to be printed in Spanish and English. And they're like, well, that accommodates. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It does the exact opposite of the stated intent. Rather than having people say, well, we're going to be a part of this grand experiment called the United States of America, we're gonna alter it and we're gonna change it for you. And you know, if you wanted to take it to the farthest extreme, then you'd have to do it for everybody. You'd say,
well, and they're working on it. Sometimes when you go in to get a driver's license, there are multiple languages that you can that you can get to take that test, and which is odd because anywhere I've been, the street and road signs are still in English. And you know, I agree with you. It's been years coming now on the business about everything being in 2 languages. That's my grandmother. She didn't ever learn to speak English when she came here. She always spoke Albanian, and that's why my dad's generation, part of why they did, is because she didn't learn to speak English. So when I go to the store, there's not one bottle of laundry soap that has Albanian on it. And my grandmother didn't ask not one person to cater to her. She raised, my grandpa died when my dad was 6, and my dad was the youngest of 9 children, 8 living, that were born in 12 years. So my dad was 6, his oldest sister was 18 when my grandfather passed away. My grandmother, not speaking English, raised that family on a little farm in East Tremonton. She didn't ask anybody to prepare any documents or anything in her native language because she knew and she valued the freedom and liberty that she had here, and that's why they came here. And so we are enabling people to come here and not participate in what makes this country great. And in my mind, that's criminal. If you come to the United States, come here, assimilate, be an American, cherish what we have. If you hate it so bad, if you don't like it here, if you think you've got it so rough, then go back to where you came from. No one's asking you to stay. And that's not racist or bigot or anything else. It's just like if a guest comes into my home and they don't like the bed that I have here for them to sleep on, they can go get a hotel, and I'm not going to be offended. If my accommodations aren't good enough for you, that's okay. I'll still love you as a person and appreciate you, but go back to whatever made you happy, but don't come here and foul what we have that's so great.
That's an excellent analogy. You know, we have people coming to our country and complaining that we're not giving them what they want. It's like it's like visiting someone's house and saying, "Oh, is this what you're going to feed me? I don't want that. Go
Yeah, and
buy me
how
some other."
ungrateful is that?
Yes, it's like you wouldn't allow that if someone. I mean, if you invited someone to your home and they're like, "Well, I don't want to eat that," like, well, then don't.
I wouldn't invite them back.
Then don't.
And
you know.
I think
All right.
it's
but
interesting
this is
because
what
we.
You know, and just to take this a step further, something that irritates me even more, if it could irritate me even more, I see all of these people who have gotten wealthy, absolutely wealthy with our capitalist system, which is a system of free trade, of buying what you want to buy, when you want to buy it, as it's available, without someone telling you what and when and how, like we're getting into now, you can purchase it. So I see movie stars and I see these women on certain morning shows that I don't mention names because I don't want to give them free airtime. But they are constantly complaining about our capitalist system of economics and how horrible it is to live here. But they have gotten filthy, stinking rich off the backs of the American taxpayers and the system that they complain about so much. And I think maybe if they don't like it here, maybe we should put together an organization to buy a one-way ticket to where they would like to live for them.
Aren't all these liberals supposed to be in Canada?
Don't ask me, but they're not happy here. And it breaks my heart to see them so unhappy.
You know, 4 years ago, like 90% of Hollywood was moving to Canada. Why are they still here? They should already have been in Canada. You know, they should be in Canada living under their system.
I guess because the capitalist system in Canada is not as lucrative as it is in the United States.
You think? Oh, it's too cold up there, eh? Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. We're like-minded individuals. You didn't know that when you woke up this morning, but we absolutely are. And there's so many things and it's not just about guns, but a firearm is an instrument of liberty. And like you said, it's something you can hold on to. And if you can hold on to an instrument of liberty, that means something. And when we tell people that they can't have this or they can't have that or they have to have a permission slip for this, or Jared, the Delaware, speaking of newspapers, we just found out, do you know, Christy, that in Delaware, in order to secure to ransom your right to carry a gun, you have to take out a newspaper ad
at least 10 days before you actually apply for your permit,
declaring your intent to apply for a dangerous, what do they call it, deadly weapon permit or something like that.
Permit to carry a deadly weapon.
What could be more unconstitutional and more of an invasion of your private person than that?
And you have to say who you are and where you live in the
Wow.
public notice.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Thank you. No, that's just insane. That is insane.
That's like something from 1782 or something. But they just revised it in 2018.
Wow.
It's something that's not talked about a lot.
I guess the only good part is if you're in the paper as having a gun in your home, someone will know better than to break in.
No, they just know to go there and steal it.
that too. No, that's and we have allowed stuff like this to happen, and as citizens of our great country, that's why I would encourage other states. Now, in Idaho, we have the Second Amendment Alliance, and it is a grassroots, homegrown Second Amendment protecting organization. And I believe they have, last I checked, close to 60,000 members. And they are a force to be reckoned with because they're politically active and they lobby candidates not professional lobby, but as their constituents. And I would encourage every state in the United States to have their own homegrown, local gun organization. And the Second Amendment Alliance, they'll get on board with other constitutional issues as well. But when it's local and it's homegrown and it's your friends and your neighbors, it makes a difference. For example, the week that we were going to vote on our constitutional carry bill last year, I think on a Thursday they put out a call. I'm not sure about the dates, but the days don't matter. It's the time frame that matters. So on a Thursday, I believe it was, a call to action was put out for as many people to come to the Capitol, as a show of support for our bill as possible. Well, the morning that this action, that they wanted everybody to be there, it was cold, it was wet, it was snowy, the roads were slick. It was like one of the worst weather days we had ever had. And so, I'm thinking, well, no one's going to show up, and you can't blame them, because I knew people that were coming like 20 miles from Caldwell. Was taking them over an hour and a half to get there because the roads were so bad and there were accidents. So when I came out of my morning committee meeting, and there were over 250 gun owners lining the hall, I was totally shocked, because I thought the weather was too bad. But this shows the support for the Constitution and for what's right. And I walked up and down that hall, and I shook hands with every person that was there. And they had signs, and in our state capitol, you can carry your weapon open. Anyone can carry in our capitol. We had an 11-year-old girl come into one of our hearings on the constitutional carry bill, and she was carrying open. I think she even made the national news. But the point is that every state should have a local organization like that. And they need to be prepared, and they need to be ready to vote for and then support legislators who will go to bat for them, because it's not easy. You may think, oh, it's Second Amendment. Well, that's just going to happen. How easy can it be? It's not. It took years for us to get full constitutional carry. The things that I would hear from legislators when I would go to them and ask them if they were going to vote for it, ask them if they would co-sponsor or sign on or support it, sometimes would just blow my mind. And then to get a hearing in your committees was like worth your life. So for 4 years we worked on it, and we were finally able to do it. But I seriously would encourage, this has got to be a grassroots movement. We've got to go back to bottom-up government. We've got to go back to making sure that our elected officials on every level, whether it's a mayor, county commissioner, especially your sheriff, because he should be the highest law enforcement official in the land, the most important officer of law we have. People need to be involved, and we need to feel the pressure from that bottom-up government, which is truly government of the people, for the people, and by the people.
And something that we've been dealing with for a long time is people like, well, you don't understand, Paul, how hard it is or how difficult it is. And
it's not supposed to be easy.
Well, yeah, I do understand that. I do understand it. But the thing is like, how important is it to you? There's so many places in our country right now that should be constitutional. Texas, for one, is a big one. Everyone's like, you don't mess with Texas and everything, blah, blah. You mess with Texas all day because they're going to do nothing about it. Houston, Austin, San Antonio, et al. Texas needs more Texas. And the big thing that I find, and it really disturbs me, and I don't know if you ran into it or not, is these myopic or short-sighted law enforcement officers, whether they're chiefs of police or sheriffs or whatever, who are making money by hostage or ransoming rights back to the people. And they're like, well, our sheriffs won't go along with it because they're making money selling permits to people. And like, then you have a bigger problem. If you have a person who's an elected official who's decided that the Constitution doesn't really matter because I can make money off of it, or I can make money, ransoming people's rights back to them, so that's what I'm going to do. you got a serious problem, because that guy thinks the Constitution wasn't set up so that you could fill your pockets. Or was it?
No, it wasn't. No, in Idaho, we actually passed a law so that because the sheriff issues the concealed carry permit, they cannot charge any more for that than the cost of the fingerprints and the cost of the background check and what it takes to process it. That's law in Idaho, because there was such a discrepancy. Some counties were 150, some were 25, some whatever. So to stop people, to stop those agencies from making money on our Second Amendment right, we did that. The other thing that we have to be really cautious of, and we're seeing this with the China virus thing, is we pass these red flag laws. We pass, where you can be taken in without due process in the name of safety.
Mm-hmm.
We pass child protection laws that just totally violate and strip parents' rights in the name of keeping children safe. And we have to be really cautious of those as well. The red flag thing is huge, because I've talked to several veterans lately, and this one guy called me. He says, I'm just shocked because I just got back from my doctor's appointment at the VA, and they wanted to know how many guns I had in my house. He said, what does that have to do with my ulcer? I said, nothing. But it's a way to track what you're doing, and at some point possibly use that in a red flag situation to come in and take your guns away. Now, I was just totally shocked the other day. I read that the Census Bureau had done some sort of a survey or canvas, and they've decided that 30% of us are depressed during this coronavirus, China virus situation. Well, of course we are. I mean, we can't work, we can't shake hands, we can't hug, we can't go to the movie, our kids can't go play at the park. What do you expect? So number one, why is the Census Bureau doing that? And number two, those who responded positive to that survey, that information is never going to go away.
That's
and at some
insane.
point in the future, will that be used against them?
Yeah, all right. The a census should be the size of a 3x5 postcard. How many people, ages, end of story, male, female, end of story. That's it. Not, what is your, that's, and you recall when the Comrade Barry was pushing these psycho censuses through with like 2 or 3 pages worth of questions and so forth. And I told my wife and I were like, we're not filling this crap out. And Jared, do you remember when they sent a census person to our house?
There's big money in data collection. That's where a lot of money is made nowadays. Collecting data, selling data. And so I'm convinced that that's what it's for.
And then what's even worse though is this during Comrade Barry's rule, they sent this woman around, and she told us that you have to fill this out because it's the law. Like, you better get off my property.
Right, and there are things that we are required constitutionally to fill out. But again, that's why it's important that we know what our rights are. What does the Constitution say? What do we have to fill out? What questions do we really need to answer? Because the census is supposed to be used to determine your representation in your government.
Yeah, not whether you're feeling depressed, not whether you have guns in your house, male, female, ages.
Well, how dare
That's
you?
all you need to know.
How dare you not care about people's positivity or depression?
No.
I have a question.
I do care about it, but that's my family and my church and my community's business. It doesn't need to go into a database somewhere where at some point someone can come back and say, oh, you were depressed. Are you sure you're fit to have a firearm?
Man, that's crazy. I really like the analogy that you gave earlier about your neighbor's front doorstep. If you go there and ask them to give you their property or whatever, that's how you should look at the government as well. And I really like that because it's true. The government is supposed to be made up of our neighbors. And from the bottom down, from the bottom up government that you were talking about earlier, is having the grassroots movement and whatnot. I really, truly believe that that's the solution to the problems that are revealing themselves, pandemic or not, good or bad. I think that there's a lot that's being revealed right now that the majority of the population didn't really know about. So it's important for us to realize, yes, the government is made up of, or supposed to be made up of, our neighbors. And the further we let it get away from our doorstep, the less decision-making process that we actually have in it.
Jared, Christy, I don't know if you're hearing this. It sounds like Jared is talking to us from the surface of the moon.
A little bit, but I'm catching what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you
So,
remember in the when Neil Armstrong told us what he was doing on the moon? That's kind of what it sounds like what Jared was doing right now.
It does a little bit.
It sounds like your signal's being bounced off.
He's probably not old enough to remember that, but us old timers, that's been 50 years now.
Well, you can go back and watch it on YouTube.
I'll have to do that.
Here's the most important thing. Well, maybe not most important. One important thing is, Christy, I want you to make sure that you give Zach your mailing address, because we're going to get you a signed copy of Examining the Armed Citizen. And make sure
thank you.
You have that. And essentially, it's kind of, you're going to read that, you'll be like, hey, I've been saying this for a long time, but it's good to have positive affirmation. It is.
It is. And if I might be so bold as to ask if I could add one more thing before I go. And that's that when we're talking about bottom-up government and citizen involvement, I'm a mom and a grandma. I don't have a college degree. I've owned businesses through the years and stuff. I've been PTA president, precinct committee person. But I am a common, normal, everyday citizen of the United States and of the state of Idaho. Everybody is entitled to run for office. Everybody is entitled to take part in this process. And if more common, everyday, ordinary people don't, this is where we find ourselves. Our government should not be made up of those who consider themselves elite or who we consider to be elite. They should be made up of the baker and the rancher and the shoemaker and everyday people who are in the trenches working hard to make this country what it is. Those are the people that our system of government was set up to represent us, and we need to get behind them and support them. And then we need to watch, they keep talking about term limits. We own term limits. We vote either every 2 or every 4 years for every elected official in this country. And if things don't change in our government because of who serves, the onus is on us. We own that.
Yeah.
That's actually something that I wanted to ask is, if I know we have listeners out there that want to get involved in their local community. So, Christy, where did you start your journey into being a politician or being involved in politics?
Well, first of all, I'm not a politician, and anyone that knows me well will tell you that they call me a stateswoman because I'm not a politician. Years ago I was PTA president, and you think, well, how does that help? But it does. And then I was on the school board. I am a precinct committee person, and that's kind of where I got my start in this kind of politics. I didn't ever dream of running for state office. That was the farthest thing off my radar ever. I thought maybe about county commissioner. Even when I was in high school, my friends wanted me to run for county commissioner, but I didn't turn 18 till after we graduated, and by then everybody was gone. So I ran for precinct committee person and got involved in that and in the activities of the state party. So I had a little bit of an understanding of how things worked. And, anybody can. You get in touch with your local officials that are open to you, that will talk to you. And if they won't talk to you and they won't return your phone calls or emails, get rid of them. Find somebody that will listen to you and truly be your voice. Because I've read letters from my constituents on the floor of the House of Representatives. I've been in State Affairs Committee meetings and been texting with people and messaging with people so that I could say what they wanted said about a subject. And that's what your representatives should be doing, especially in the day and age of media we have. So, go to your city council meetings, be involved, because the government closest to you has the most impact on your life. Go to your city council meetings, go to your county commission meetings, know what your laws and ordinances are. Read the Constitution. I've mailed out over 200 of them in the last week and a half, and some of them have gone to Utah. So, take control. Know the law. Know the people that represent you. Be there. Listen to them. Question them. Don't just go along to get along with whatever comes down the pipe.
That's right. Fight against the reasonableness disease. All right. Christy Zito is running for Senate in the state of Idaho. And if you are in her district or you can vote for her, I strongly thank you, Christy, very much for taking time out of your day to be with us here on Student of the Gun Radio. And we will be in touch in the future. And like I said, you didn't know when you woke up this morning that you were a student of the gun, but you absolutely are.
Not to this extent, no. And it's an honor for you to have me on your show. I'm so grateful. Thank you. And thank you for all you're doing for freedom and liberty and the great American way.
Thank you to your cousin for putting us together.
Yep.
I know. He's so cute. He's such a handsome young man.
Fantastic.